Today's dedication is for Zahn, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. Maha versus Heartless Hidetsugu, Alesha, and Koma. With a 3-lander, Dorothy Voidwalker, a means of maybe wrathing the board if we take too long to get going. I don't particularly like that. Bit too slow for my liking. Yeah, that's not really all that thrilling either. If we had a means of card draw, I'd be tempted to keep it. Nothing particularly wrong with these hands, but there's something wrong with that one. So now we have to go down 2 cards. Alright, well that's the most interesting one we've had, but we do have to get rid of 2 cards now, like I said. So Vesuva, and it'll have to be the Plague Spitter. We've got plenty of effects like that, so we'll just have to hope that we draw into them. Do not have double black at the moment, unfortunately, but there's a Burnished Heart at least, so get that down tapped and pass the turn. A land being thrown off the top of the library into the bin by Alesha, and a hideaway card in Spinerock Knoll for the red deck. Well, there's a Mana Crypt, so that just equals Burnished Heart here, doesn't it? And then if we do manage to get into a black mana next turn, we'll be able to play the Hunted Horror and crack the Burnished Heart, which would be ideal. Or not. A Return to Nature. Well, we could get the Burnished Heart out a turn sooner at least, so have our mana rot blown up, but we can drop a land and crack this, so not the end of the world. Talisman of Indulgence for the Mardu deck, and just another tap land for the red deck. Draw back into the Tarion Soul Cleaver, so let's just play a land, might as well swing in for some damage and punish the Koma player, and then crack this straight away. More artifact removal, the Broken Bond going on to a Talisman, our opponent being really aggressive with those. Taking out the Mana Crypt is fair enough, but Talisman? I don't know if I'd bother with that. You don't have to cast spells just because you have them in hand. Is able to get down and crack a Wayfarer's Bauble anyway. Pyretic Ritual will add 3 mana in order to gain an additional 1, and that is Koth of the Hammer. So animate, say Mountain. It does have Summoning Sickness because it only came in this turn. Alright, and there's a Swamp, so do we just risk our commander here? Might be that it's counter magic held up by Koma, but we'll try it anyway. No priority being held up here, so we'll assume not. Might as well throw out the equipment as well and see if Koma wants to blow that up. Get more good ward costs onto a legendary. This one is discard a card, so yeah, we've got a few opponents with not too many cards in hand, so they might not want to point removal at this. Toski already has base power and toughness of 1, so not affected by the Maha. Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff, and Alesha comes into play, so seeing the second commander and making a treasure token off the Lotho because that's the second spell this turn. A power balance for the red player. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. You can cast it without paying its mana cost if the 2 spells have the same mana value. Alright, have to be wary of that. Plays another tap land and untaps the mountain, so potentially wants to just hold up. Yeah, surely he just wants to hold up the additional mana. Only 2 cards in hand. Another swamp for us, so Cabal Stronghold starts to become more and more relevant. So why don't we just tap this down now? So just basically converting that into 4 black mana. Don't think it's relevant, but throw this onto Maha. Suppose we could turn this into a swamp to make the Cabal Stronghold better. Or if we do draw into more swamps, getting into another Cabal Stronghold would be better still. So yeah, this taps for colourless anyway. Let's just try our luck. This isn't legendary, is it? No. And then we'll go through to attacks. Haven't done anything too relevant with our commander yet, other than it being a flying commander. But the fact that it has vigilance will hopefully keep attackers away from us. So successfully getting rid of Koth of the Hammer. And let's see about a Hunted Horror. Maybe give that over to the red deck. So Power Balance going to trigger, see if he gets a 2-drop off the top of his library. Reveals a Mountain to us. And the Hunted Horror, a 7/7 trample. We have to give, in this instance, a couple of 3/1 Centaurs with Pro Black over to the Koth player. But hopefully we're going for Massacre Worm next turn with our commander in tow. Imprisoned in the Moon. Onto the Alesha. So Koma's nothing but interaction apparently. Which makes sense for Koma. Buys you time to get into the commander, and then this is Army in a Can. And then Toski may be free to swing in over here, but decides to block with Lotho anyway. So trying to keep the card draw away from the Simic player. And our Soul Cleaver will trigger for the first time. So a plus counter onto our commander, and 7 power is better than 6 because it means it's 3 attacks to take a player down. Chainer for the Mardu player this time, and discards a mountain in order to trigger the Chainer in order to cast the Lotho from the bin. Throws out an access tunnel, so hopefully can get into some removal for Imprisoned in the Moon. Mana Barbs, whenever a player taps a land for mana, it's 1 damage to that player. So there'll be a new card on top of the library for the red player. We have to be, well, we just have to keep our fingers crossed that it's not something that's of any relevance to any of us. Alright, well, drawing into this means that we can draw 2 cards and lose 2 life here. So we can do this, and of course take the Mana Barbs hits. So take 4 damage to Mana Barbs in total this turn. Generate ourselves 4 mana, but we might draw into a swamp here. So draw 2, lose 2 life. Just going to hold off on the Massacre Worm in case we get into anything else that's of any relevance. So power balance, see if they reveal a mana value 3 card off the top. That is, yep, a Patchwork Banner. So creatures of the chosen type, +1/+1, that will potentially save their centaurs if they decide to choose that creature type. Obviously it's in here for a reason, and I dare say it's not for centaurs in a mono red deck. Named Shaman with this. And there is a swamp for us. So, if we play the swamp, we've got a mana floating. Tap them all down into Cabal Coffers. Will give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a floating mana for the Massacre Worm. So do we just do it after all? So taking more Mana Barbs, but hopefully land this Massacre Worm now. And Lotho, that is the second spell that we've cast, so another treasure token. Power balance reveals a Furnace of Wrath, so much as I want to concentrate on Coma, we're going to have a lot of damage dealt to us quite quickly, so yeah, I think we have to try and get rid of the mono red player as quickly as we can, especially seeing as how we know what's coming next. Don't want to take 2 damage to every land being tapped. And obviously every creature of our opponent's taken out because they all had 1 toughness, so that is going to buff Maha up quite considerably. Now a 12/11, meaning that it's a 2-shot to take someone out with commander damage. So go to the right, the 7/7 can go to the left. And it's not likely that we're going to do much else during this game unless we can refill our hand somehow. But we got to see what we want to do with Maha, which is always what we want to do on these videos, is show off the commander. Okay, and that player scoops, because of course he does, so that's a ban. Total waste of our attack. Okay, and the Simic player scoops as well, didn't even try to get down his commander. Incredible. Alright, so both of those players blocked. We saw a Pirate's Pillage there, discarding a Plains, making some treasure, and now a Goblin Engineer for a tutor. So they go for Phyrexian Dragon Engine. They don't have Chainer in play anymore, thankfully. So throwing out a Sol Ring, we can exile this with the Bojuka Bog next turn. Unless they go for, no, Unearth. Going on to the Lotho again, so they're very eager to keep this in play. Second time it's been reanimated. And Alesha coming into the attacking zone, so willing to throw that away for the sake of some reanimation here. And the Soul Cleaver getting bigger and bigger because it triggers on treasure as well, which is absolutely relevant in today's game. So now it is a 2-1 with double strike. So is there any Death Touch or anything like that here? Just looking to discard their hand and draw 3, I imagine. Yeah, I think we can just block both of these. So Massacre Worm hits them for 4 here because 2 of their creatures went down. And the Soul Cleaver makes the commander even bigger. Don't know if I've ever really played around with the Tarion Soul Cleaver, but it's turning out to be a very relevant card. Very nearly up to just 1 shot in our opponents here. Alright, well, there's a slow means of gaining some cards, but we might as well play it here. Bojuka Bog, see if our opponent scoops to that because he seems to want to load up his graveyard. Obviously that exiles it. Then we can just drop the Phyrexian Arena and turn everything in sideways here. So after the red player scooped with the Centaurs in tow, turns out this is just a 2 mana, 7/7 trample. The Goblin might as well throw it in the way because he can't reanimate anything anymore. But trample's really good with this deck as well, not something that I thought of in a mono black deck. But with your opponent's creatures only having 1 toughness, you can trample the vast majority of your damage through. So maybe the odd trample equipment would be worth having. They only have 1 creature that's allowed to die now, so no sacrifice shenanigans or anything like that, not while the Massacre Worm is in play. but I'm quietly confident that we'll be able to win this one at this point. Yeah, but just deciding to scoop next turn, we were drawing into another land and a Gissa, Glorious Resurrector, which is a little bit too late. Once the creatures have been wiped out once, you're not going to take too much advantage of this, but you can always wait until after a board wipe and players start to rebuild their boards. But yeah, facing down a 1918 Flying Trample Maha is too much to handle for most players, I imagine. Apologies for the early scoops as ever, it's Magic Online, and I'll try Maha again if you all want to see it, but I imagine that that's how most of the games are going to go, because it's a real pain to try and keep your creatures in play against Maha, and, well, I don't imagine that's much fun for your opponents. If you do want to see it again, then leave it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments section. And please consider donating on Patreon as well. Pretty much the only thing keeping me doing this channel at this point is my loyalty to the patrons, so huge thank you to them for their support of the channel. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.